Hi, I'm Weston Jolly. It's October 6th, and this is 60 Minutes of Truth with me, Weston Jolly, as your host. I'm very grateful for you to be here because we've been talking about COVID from the very start of the 60 Minutes of Truth, and today I want to expand upon that. Now, some of you may be rolling your eyes like, oh boy, why would we be talking about something that the world, in terms of the pandemic, is beginning to finish? And there's been statements that we are done. The President of the United States made that comment, correct? And yet, this is the time that, for whatever reason, that I have chosen to extract COVID from the world. And I don't want to necessarily talk about the physical things as much as have you become aware of some of the things that I have been gleaning in terms of this opportunity to have COVID. It's been 9 weeks as of today for me to have contracted it, and I'm still in process, of which I'll talk about very candidly. But I'm not really interested in talking about the physical things per se, as much as having you become aware of maybe some of the lessons that I have pulled from this opportunity or this experience, and to share that with you, again, quite candidly. So before COVID became into my awareness from within my body, I was having some intense dreams, and this is like two or 3 days before that I was aware that I had COVID. And I was having some very, very strong dreams, vision-like dreams with exceeding detail. And I noticed that everything was, the topics, if you will, were that of the past. And, you know, if you're anything like me, and I'm sure you are to some degree, it's like, oh my gosh, when are we going to finish talking or regurgitating attributes of the past? And yet, this is what was happening. It was very intense. I was aware of that before this event took place in terms of me having it within my body. And it'd been a busy week, actually a very, very busy week. And it was Friday that I felt tired. And the reason I remember is because I was to have a haircut. I remember that my hairstylist canceled our appointment because she had COVID. And I was ecstatic that I didn't have to go, but even more so that I wouldn't be exposed to her because, of course, I don't want to get that, and I've been very, very diligent. Rubber gloves, masks, and very, very limited contact with the outside world, literally, for this entire time. So come Friday, this haircut event came and went, and I didn't have to go, so I was very relieved of that. And my wife and I decided to hike a mountain, so we did on Friday, and we do it a lot, and so we went to the top, came back down, and come Saturday, I just felt really, really tired, extraordinarily tired, and I was like, wow, that's weird, because, you know, we hike a lot, and there's a lot of things I do athletically, run and ride motocross, motorcycles, and row, and, you know, I'm pretty athletic, so the idea that I was tired for what we had done in terms of the hiking seemed surprising to me. And I was just that tired. So Saturday I'm just kind of resting and just kind of taking it easy and beyond having done what I will call the weekly chores. And then Sunday came around and I just felt even more tired. And I couldn't figure out why, but I thought, well, we're just going to go with it. So I was kind of just lounging in front of the TV, seemingly sleeping quite a bit, meaning I don't normally sleep during the day. And then Monday, I was still feeling not so good. And so it was in that moment that my wife determined that maybe I should get a test, a COVID test. And I'm like, oh, there's no need for me to take a test because I haven't been around anybody. And that was literally a true statement. And she goes, no, I think we should do it anyway. So she went to the store, bought a little COVID test. And I don't know if you've ever taken them. I've had it a couple times, but this is a different kind. And, of course, you have to put this Q-tip up your nose about 18 feet and twirl it around and pull out whatever pieces that we're wanting to get into the COVID testing machine. And I did that. And, of course, I'm sneezing like crazy because it really irritated my sinuses. And within 2 minutes of the 15 that's allotted for the test, I found that I had this great big line that indicated that I had COVID. And I was completely shocked because, again, I hadn't done anything or been out and I hadn't gone to a rave or I hadn't been around town hugging people like I normally do. Nothing even remotely close to that. So I couldn't figure out what was going on, yet I was feeling really achy, definitely had a headache, and feeling tired. And so, okay, so I'm shutting down on Monday, and this is the 8th of August. And I put everything on hold, and I thought, well, we'll just kind of cruise through this. And I have no idea what this experience is about, beyond my having facilitated and tuned into many, many people who have gone through this experience. And of course, it hits people in different ways. And I had this concept that it wouldn't hit me badly because I'm athletic, I'm pretty healthy, I don't have any lung issues, I don't have any predisposed issues in terms of a health issue. So I thought this would be, a cold or something that would be maybe even more exaggerated than that. Didn't know. But come Monday night, I went into a pretty severe fever. And that fever was, in one sense, quite frightening because I've been hot before, but this is a different kind of hot. And I remember feeling very uncomfortable that something was happening to my body, and this is of course what happens when we all get sick, right? But this was a different kind of feeling. I mean, it wasn't the normal kind of sickness that I would normally associate. In essence, this was different for me. And I remember asking spiritually from the get-go that I needed some help. And this is an important piece, my choice to ask for help. And they gave to me this really interesting affirmation. Interesting because normally affirmations put in the form of the positive, that I am healthy. But this affirmation was no resistance, almost a double negative. And I couldn't, think about it because I didn't really feel good enough to give it real consideration in terms of the thought process. I just took the affirmation, put it in place. And the worst that I got in terms of my feeling, I continued to put forth this thought, no resistance, no resistance. And it was interesting because when I was doing that, I would actually feel my body relieve itself, meaning just kind of rest and receive this. I had no idea to what degree or what escalation I was about to experience. And, when you're in that space and you don't know what's going to happen as it would relate to you. You can observe other people all day long, you can read articles, you can talk to all your friends and neighbors. But when it comes to it happening to you, there's this mind, right, the ego, that begins to wonder what's happening. And that mind, now, it was as if it was on fire. It literally just took off. There was just no controlling all of these thoughts that were now coming to the surface. So I was speaking of the dreams that I was having pre-COVID that were very, very intense. And now it's a whole other world. Meaning if the dreams were an indication about where we're going to come, they were low level compared to where we are now in terms of what was going on. And it's interesting because when you find yourself at a deficit in a normally healthy body, it's interestingly how quick you begin to lose a confidence, perhaps even an empowerment, a wonderment of who we are, what we're doing, what we're accomplishing. And my thoughts that first night were very intense in terms of the enormity of the ego that was playing. And part of it was just feeling uncertain from the get-go how strong this is going to become. Meaning I don't know. I know people who have died from it. I know people who have had to be incubated. I know people who have had COVID and had it and jumped right back up again. I know people who had it for maybe a week or two and they jumped back up again. And yet this was not my experience at all, even from the get-go. So I'm having this escalation of fever. My mind's just completely racing. I'm using this affirmation, no resistance, repetitively. And for these 9 weeks, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, I probably said that at least 1,000 to 2,000 times. I have repeated that again and again and again, and it's still in play as we speak because I'm obviously not finished with this experience. And that's important for you to know, meaning if we have to cut this video short because I run out of energy, at least you'll know why. I'm bringing all my efforts to bring this to you from a heart perspective. And I think it's really important because I thought that instead of just giving a presentation about, someone who gets COVID, that would be me, and again, who cares, but giving you, again, a spiritual perspective of what was happening. So in my asking for help, which was received immediately, and me getting this affirmation of no resistance, I also asked that in the space, which is an interesting ask, but something that I did and is truthful, I asked if indeed I could increase my knowledge, my awareness, and my empowerment. Now, that may seem strange to you that, I would ask that based upon my feeling, in an escalation not good. But I thought it would be a perfect time to put that forth, and I did. And the first thing that popped in addition to the no resistance and me asking for this more additional knowledge and this understanding, was this very clear message that I had to let go of records. Now, when you think of a record, you may think of a record that goes around like this. You may think of a record that looks like a file. But the truth is, it's literally a record that is associated with the past, and sometimes we do play that record around and around in a repetitive way. And so that was the first thing that was coming to the surface, and it was important for me to address these records. Now, these records weren't, and I'm going to refer to them as music records, because these musical records weren't being played on a low level. They were being cranked all the way up as if you were a teenager again, and hearing all of this noise, all of this egotistical stuff, thoughts, beliefs, perceptions from other people, and some pretty humbling things as a result. For example, I remember having a thought very specifically of a very close friend of mine, and certainly clients as well, who has spent the majority of her life in a wheelchair. And I just felt, I wondered if I had been compassionate enough with her for the many years that I have known her and still do, because of my own infliction. And I say infliction because this was something that was happening to my body, but it wasn't like I broke my back, or that this was going to be a permanent thing that I thought would be happening. So I found myself wondering if my choice to even be before you has been compassionate enough in terms of really, really being connected. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying that just to try and win friends and influence people. I'm interested in literally being heartfelt about my experiences during my COVID-19 spiritual retreat. And I've framed it that way because, again, this is that opportunity that I wanted to take or use that space to have some value beyond just getting quote-unquote sick. I mean, this is the ultimate of what we've been asked, again, from the beginning to really go within. So I thought I might as well dig in and really go far with this. But I wondered about my compassion, and if I had been compassionate enough as a person, compassionate enough in my life, and I'm talking about as a teenager, as a young man, and, all of these different stages, I wondered if this is something that I had offered enough of. And it's not easy to say this, but I have felt that I haven't been, and that was tough to see. Now, I haven't said this yet, but I want to put this in context at this particular moment because it's important. Through this review of the past, these records that I'm having to take a peek at, if you will, in terms of my past or experiences with other people, it dawned on me that I may be experiencing a life review. And a life review, as you know, is something that takes place when we die. And I'm starting to have a wonderment, oh my gosh, is that where I'm going in terms of this escalation? And it did continue to get worse. Meaning the first night was pretty tough. The second night was even tougher. And I say night, the day and night. The third day, and it kept getting stronger. And I felt like I was literally climbing. Meaning, like I shared with you before, we were climbing a hill on the Friday before I had COVID, and that's a very steep climb. And you get out of breath, and you you wonder if you have enough air, and if you've got enough blood in your legs to continue this escalation. And all of these thoughts were happening in a different way with my COVID experience. I was wondering if I was going to be able to continue to go forward. And I'm wondering if this is the end, meaning am I coming to my physical end? Now, I asked, and they said no, that you're not coming to your end. But I couldn't help but notice that these things that I was being asked to access, these records of my past, these file folders of my past, were pretty significant and much further in depth than I've ever done in any kind of, shall we say, review. Hypnotic review, channeling review. This is a whole nother level of, we'll call it review. And so I was going into these attributes of the past, now wondering, if I'm going to die. I'm told that I'm not via spirit. And yet I feel worse and worse and worse. I'm continuing to get through it. And at this point, I was taking Paxlovid. And if you've experienced that, someone had said that it's going to leave a metallic taste in your mouth. I thought I'll be fine with that. And you have to take this pill twice a day for 5 days. And I thought, okay, no big deal. And of course, it's with an intention to help me or prevent me from having to get to the point that I have to go to the hospital. And I thought, well, we're in for that. So I'm taking this Paxlovid. It has metallic taste in your mouth for certain, and it's not too bad, I didn't think. And yet, as it continued past the first day, it just felt like everything in my mouth I was chewing on foil, and it just tasted horrible. And it became another way for my mind to focus on how bad I'm feeling with regards to my mouth, because I have all of this foil in my mouth, or this taste of foil. And someone had read in the family that cinnamon will actually help that go away. And I thought, well, I don't need that because I'll be fine. You know, I'm trying to use my willpower, if you will, to go through this. And at one point, I think it was like a day and a half of having to take this Paxlovid, that I determined that I need some help. So I'm now chewing, cinnamon gum. I'm actually having red hot tamales, which I don't now eat. It's got a lot of sugar in it, and yet it's really, really spicy hot with the cinnamon. And yet I'm using this to try and get that taste in my mouth. Now, when I say taste, I'm waking up at night. And if you've ever, of course, not brushed your teeth, or you've eaten something like garlic, or, in days of old, if you drank a little bit and you wake up in this, you go to the bathroom and you have this really god-awful taste in your mouth, and you're like, my gosh, what have I eaten? And that's what I was waking up to, only it was metallic. And it was, like I said, just like someone stuffed all of this foil in my mouth. When I was a kid, I had braces. And if you ever got anything, with metal braces, by the way, with the metal, with anything foily, it just creates this really, kind of like a fingers against the chalkboard effect within your nerves. And that's how I was feeling with this metallic tasting. Sorry, didn't mean to go off on that so long. But this metallic tasting was something I thought I would be able to, just kind of swim through, and that wasn't happening. And so I found that my mind, or my ego, literally attached to that, as just another thing to, amplify. And I say amplify, I want you to see my pulsating, just every second, about how this tastes in my mouth, how I'm feeling bad, old memories, old thoughts, the idea that I might die. Did you know people who have died? And then my mind starts to go into other thoughts. Like, I wonder if I'm going to be able to spend more time with my children. I start to wonder about being able to be present with you. And I say you, the people that I have known for many, many years, and those that I still haven't met yet, that I'm very much interested in. And these were real emotions and real thoughts. And I won't lie, there was a part of me that felt sorry for myself, and wondering if this is something that I was going to be able to overcome, because your will starts to get beat down, and this is an escalation like a physical one, where you're climbing a mountain and you're wondering if you can do it, and if you can actually complete this. And this is part of the processing that was taking place within me. And there were a lot of people, that were kind enough and loving enough to send messages and to offer prayers and text messages and just attributes of encouragement. And it was a little challenging to receive that, because I kept thinking to myself that I'm not that bad. I kept thinking that there's a lot of other people that have had it a lot worse than me, and I'm not in a hospital. And when you're the recipient of that kind of love, it can be very humbling. And I had to repeat this affirmation to not be in resistance of this love that was being offered to me by you and by the universe, and certainly my family. And I would have you know that my capacitation to take care of myself was non-existent. And what I mean by that is I couldn't have done this alone. And that sparked a whole other series of feelings within me, because I wasn't sure. I was thinking about people who are alone, and I don't want to exaggerate that, but I know a lot of people who are alone all the time, and And I don't want to say that it's a bad or good thing, but it's from a compassionate perspective. And then for them to have something like this and not have the means to get the help that I was having through my partnership was something that just took me to another level. And I actually began sending energy, sending a lot of prayers for those of you who are participating in this video now. Wanting to even give more energy in the way that maybe I hadn't been compassionate enough before. And so I'm thinking about this from, again, like people I know who have had lifelong infirmities within their bodies. And these thoughts of wonderment that, maybe my time's coming to a close. And even though I have the spiritual insight that that's not the case, meaning I'm not, this isn't the end, it's something was still happening through my mind. And I was sleeping pretty close to 16 hours a day. I was sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night, and easily two naps during the day, being a couple hours each, and easily not doing anything. And I say anything, reading was a challenge. Thinking was very much a challenge as well, and the extent of my activity was literally going to the bathroom and coming back again. That's what I was able to do. And I was in bed for 5 weeks. And I don't say that with trying to draw something to me in terms of poor, pitiful me. That's not what I want to communicate. I'm just saying that that was the nature of it. And about at 5 weeks, I was beginning to show some progress. And we have our mailbox right outside, actually where I'm speaking to you now. So from the house to the mailbox, from the front of the house to the mailbox is maybe 50 feet. And after 5 weeks, I was trying to walk to the mailbox and I couldn't do it. I didn't have enough energy to get to the mailbox. And I'm sharing this because we create a very, very strong correlation to who we are in terms of who we think that we are via the ego, right? And of course that has to do with this embodiment. And I become comfortable with this embodiment, and of course I have taken my body for granted in a lot of ways, or at least that was something I was giving consideration to during this process. I'm going to kind of back up a little bit, because in my the awareness that was given to me in terms of this no resistance, I was wondering, as I do all the time with you, but maybe I haven't been practicing enough for my own self, I was wondering how my chakras are. So when I go to tune into you, I will go from the head to the toe and tune into the chakras to see if there's any blockages or any shutdowns. And so I determined, what a wise thought, right, to give that consideration to my own self. And so I was starting to go through the chakras within the body. Is my crown chakra, how clear is it? And to what degree is my third eye? And what about my throat, my heart, solar plex, and of course sacral and root? And what I found was that they were all messed up, and not kind of. And so I thought, wow, that's surprising me, because normally, pre-COVID, they were pretty clean. And I watched that as a result of me just being me and certainly doing what I do to make sure that I'm energetically I'll call it balanced, very, very balanced, not tipping to one side versus another. So I was noticing that I was literally pretty out of balance. In fact, I was checking my chakras, and I'm still doing it, probably 10 to 12 times a day, which is a lot, meaning, morning, noon, and night. And by the way, even in my dream state, checking to ensure that my energy, my ability to process energy was open, again, with intention to receive. And this pattern showed up, meaning all the chakras were messed up to one degree, varying parts, crown, throat, third eye, heart, clearly. But what the pattern was is from the lower chakras. That would be the solar plex, sacral, and root. They were almost always out. And sometimes when I do that with other people, if I tune into you, I do that, I'll give that a gradation or a number so I can determine how much that person is out. And in this case, I'm doing it for my own self. And I was lots of times at 10% of the 100% capacity, and sometimes 0, especially in the root. And so I thought, wow, I don't know what's going on here, but I need to really triple time in getting these chakras open up so I can integrate. So part of what I did, and I thought that this might be of value to you, is I determined to take myself outside, not physically because I, again, couldn't do that. And yet I would pretend or imagine that I would take myself outside and I would remove everything, and I would literally put myself vertically into like a vat of mud. I guess like you would take a mud bath. And I would do that from literally the waist down. And I did that a lot. To the part I even thought about how am I going to get these mud stains off of my body because I'm doing it so often, which I, again, physically wasn't doing. But I was having to do that because I couldn't find myself connecting well rooted into the earth energy. I'm sharing that because I think it's very, very important, not just for myself, but clearly for you. And certainly if this is an event that you've gone through, then I think it's hugely important. And this is something I'm still practicing as we speak. I'm going to fast forward to where we are now. It's been 9 weeks since I've had it. My physical accomplishment at this moment is, as of yesterday, I was able to walk to the beach. There's a beach that's close to us, and the car was parked literally at the boardwalk going to the beach. So I walked the boardwalk, walked to the beach, past the guard station, got to the water, walked a little bit past the water and back again, give or take 200 yards. And having done that, takes me down to absolute nothingness, as if I have given 2 pints of blood or just a complete shutdown of energy. It's not just one thing. It's your mind and your body and your ability even to create balance. And that's why, again, if I have to prematurely end our video here, then I'm willing to do that, and I hope that you'll have understanding to that. But yesterday, that's been the highlight of my event, to be able to walk that distance. So I've graduated from the 50 feet that I couldn't get to the mailbox. That became an accomplishment that I was able to do. And now, a couple hundred yards is where I'm at after 9 weeks. And I have heard people who have written me who have said, that they had COVID for a day or two. They had a headache. Then they're right back up. And parts of me really competitively wants to go, wow, I wish I had that kind of COVID. And then there's a part of you that processes this wonderment, wondering if we've done something wrong. And that's something that I'm not excited to tell you, but I had a thought, I'm wondering if there's something that I've done. And like I shared in the beginning, there were people who would ask me, the question, how did you get COVID? Let me tell you in the beginning, you don't care, because you become so sick that it doesn't really matter what it was that caused the accident. So even if I was traveling down the highway and someone hit me and someone was asking me what the details of the accident, from a cognizant perspective, I didn't care. All I cared about was getting better off of this top realm. And I expected, because of all other illnesses or most of the physical elements that I've ever had in the past, I've always been able to bounce. I mean, you go through the bottom and then you get a little bit better, then suddenly like a flu, then you feel great, better, than the next day you're doing what you normally do. And I wasn't incurring that at all. And in fact, I went to offer a session with someone that will probably be listening to the very first one I offered. I think it was 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks after the beginning of COVID, and a very delightful person to talk with. I thought it would be very easy, only to find out that in that one dialogue, and by the way, it was a very easy session, but then in that dialogue, it took me down to the ground in bed, again, 16 hours of sleep, again for 2 days, because of that one discussion that I had with that one particular person on the phone. Now, I'm sharing that candidly, and the person who I gave the session to, she is aware of this, but I wanted to be aware that it had nothing to do with her. It had to do with me, in terms of me not realizing that my energy to expend in that way was a lot greater than I had anticipated. I'm sharing that too because I think it's important that you realize that when you are participating energetically, sending prayers, energy, thoughts, and or being tied in old records of your own self, there's a lot of consumption of energy that's taking place there. Because I was so weak, meaning without energy, any kind of energy in terms of physically expending it, was immediately registered. Like I can't do that. I'm not capacitated to do that. But this also included other people's energy, meaning if I was feeling, as in empathetically feeling someone else's energy by thought, I would actually feel myself go low. I mean, I've always felt that, but this is a whole nother level of sensitivity. It's like taking a device that you can measure the balance of something, and yet this scale, if you will, within me got super sensitive, and to the point that it was shocking. Like a grain of sand just felt like 50 pounds of cement. It just was enormous. And whether it was a TV program, watching something, reading something, let my mind getting on something, having a thought about somebody else, just became overwhelming. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this now going to be how it's going to be in terms of going forward? And again, you don't know. So I'm wondering what is happening. I, again, had the thought somewhere in the process of how I got COVID, and I got well enough to begin to do some channeling, and I did as soon as I could. I think it took me about a week before I could actually write. And my ability to write and read, and again, hold focused attention, comes in and out. And again, I know there are a lot of people that have gotten it much worse than me, but I really wanted to be able to capture this experience and actually wanted to get some help from the outside, meaning from source, as to what things I could process. So beyond clearing the chakras and this no resistance affirmation that was being practiced all of the time, and enormously helpful, by the way, but it brought up all kinds of things that I was aware of that I was doing that I didn't realize that I was doing. And one of the most significant things that came out of it, and this is so important, and I can't believe I've waited as long to tell you what it is, and it's something we've talked about before, but it has a whole other level of meaning to me based upon this experience. That if this is the moment, this point in time right here, that I have been spending all of this energy, which is much bigger than my swinging a pencil around, all of this energy outside of the moment. And I was asked continuously to come back into this space of being in the moment. Now, when I meditate, which I've been doing for a long period of time, my choice has been to remove myself from having thought, as in any kind of thought, and to bring myself into the silent space, void of thought, if you will. And I use my breathing in terms of in and out to give focused attention if I have to give a thought to something, so I can get into this place of a void. And because I'm not able to meditate in a normal way in terms of sitting down in what would be a cross-legged lotus-like position, I'm having to meditate in the bed, which is not illegal, but something a little bit different for me because I normally don't meditate like that. But that's the only way I could do it. But I was continually being asked to be really present in the moment. And because of hearing all this noise, and I want you to think of like going to the Rolling Stones concert, and I've gone, where you use the amplification system, the amplifiers are insane in terms of how loud it is. I don't care where you sit in a concert. And I went to that in Tempe, Arizona at ASU Stadium years ago, and this was the kind of amplification that was taking place with my ego. It was just really loud. So the idea that we have all of this noise taking place, and then I'm asked to be quiet or really present in the moment, seems to be really hard. And yet the trick to getting there, and it's not really a trick, was to not be any kind of resistance. So no resistance, so that I could finally get to being present in the moment. And I found that sometimes I could maintain that being in the moment for fractions of a second. Not extended time at all. Not a second or two. That came later. But it was fractions of a second. And I found some days, as in days, perhaps even weeks, where it felt like I couldn't ever access being present in a moment. My mind was always going to something about what could take place or something that has taken place. And it creates, of course, fear, anxiety, separation, feelings of aloneness, all things that we experience in this particular embodiment, but are really challenging when you're faced with this. Now, I also was told in my channeling that they asked me the question, did I feel enabled? Which is a statement, did I feel powerful? Of course. I want you to imagine what I'm writing. I've got my pen out and I'm writing my journal. No, I don't feel enabled. I don't feel strong. I don't feel good. And the response was, do you feel sorry for yourself? And that was a tough question, I felt. I won't say an unfair question, but I had to address that. And I said, well, maybe I am feeling sorry for myself, but I'm not trying to feel sorry for myself. And they were pleased, or source was pleased with that, shall we, candor in my part to reflect that. But then there was this intention for me to become aware that my choice to feel sorry for myself is all about my ego, or my sense of self, in terms of the perceived identity. And I'm going to take this coaster and I'm going to point to my heart chakra, because this is, of course, the place, my heart chakra is yours, mine, where this is where we really are. And then oftentimes we put on a shield or a persona of who we think we are. Now, we've talked about this for an awfully long time, but this is done so regularly or so consistently that oftentimes we're not aware that we're projecting who we want to present ourselves. Let me tell you, when you become sick enough, or you go through an incident such as I'm describing here, you don't care. In terms of how you look, by the way, I sent out a newsletter to everyone last time of me being in bed, and someone made the comment, is that really how many pictures did you have to take a nice picture? And that was my first picture, by the way, that I took. But I can show you other pictures if you need to of my hair all over the place, and a more colorful example of how badly I felt. So I wasn't trying to put on an air of that I looked or was posing while I was putting forth that picture. It was just literally a snapshot that I took out of bed. Anyway, I'm talking about our perceived identity because it has a lot to do with our perceived sense of self, which includes looking in the mirror, or how we present ourselves, or even how we talk. Most of all, how we think, and how conditioned this is, that we are taught these things, especially in the form of the family brand. And what I mean by that is our surname. You know, the brand of Jolly, we have to participate in these kinds of ways because we're taught that via the family tree. Almost everybody is. And so that was something that was recurring a great deal in terms of who am I versus, this false sense of self that I'm presenting, dealing with this chakra that sometimes was open and sometimes not, was really interesting. Seeing that my lower chakras, again, solar plex and sacral and root, all being fractions of what they should be almost all the time, I kept wondering, what is it that I'm doing, or what is it that I'm thinking that has those chakras fall out, meaning because there's a reason. Meaning if we're driving down a road and suddenly the road washes up because of water, we know that a flood's taking place, and that's the reason why we can't continue that pathway. I didn't have that kind of understanding in my embodiment. I didn't know. By the way, it's kind of like, how did you get COVID? I didn't care. All I cared about was getting those chakras back into a state of alignment. I'm going to take a quick pause here because I want to share something. I did, when I started to feel better, probably at the 5-week mark, I keep a pretty good day timer in terms of my daily activities, and I began to wonder. I was starting to feel good enough to wonder how I might got exposed to COVID. So I went the week before I had COVID. And by the way, I got it, and ever since the word my wife should have it, and she didn't, as in not even remotely close to getting it. I don't know how that's possible, and it's a part of something I want to share in this moment, because in going back, I was trying to see what things that I had done. This is the mind. What things did I do? And perhaps it was even laced with the idea, what did I do wrong? When did I not, wash my hands or touch my eyes or be coughed on by somebody to get this disease? And so in my day timer, I went back and I found out that I went to the UPS store to return something. And I remember it very specifically because I walked in with a mask. I handed the item to return. It was an Amazon item, and I walked out, and I was there for maybe a minute. That was done the week prior to my having COVID. And that week prior as well, I had gone to the gas station to fill up with gas. My partner was with me, and we were to go out to eat after that. And going out to eat consisted of this, that we were taking out the food and we were actually eating in our vehicle. And this is something that we've been doing very regularly from the COVID pandemic as a means to keep ourselves protected. Now, You may think that's extreme, but that's something that we were doing, and I won't say that we haven't eaten in some open area places on a few occasions during the 2.5 years, but I'm trying to share with you the dedication that I was applying to try and prevent myself from getting this disease. So we went UPS station, I was on my own, went and filled up with gas, and of course I got gas residue in my hand, and I have stuff in the truck, so I knew that I was going to wash my hands. There's no way I wouldn't wash my hands having done that, and because we're about to go to eat. When we picked up the meal, I had a mask on, went in, came out, had the salads and whatnot that we were going to eat, and we ate in the vehicle. And that's it. That's what my exposure was to the week prior. And I've thought that can't possibly be true, meaning I had to have been around somebody, you know, like I said before, I didn't go to a rave, I didn't go to a concert, I didn't go to a wedding, I didn't go to any event, I didn't go to any place with any people at all for this whole week coming. And partially because I was really busy and I had some things I was trying to accomplish from a professional perspective and personally. And so I had a pretty good accounting of what was taking place. So couldn't figure out what I did, what I did that might have created this. And so I had this thought, and I share it with you because I think it's interesting, that maybe divine intervention, that somehow I was divinely intervened to get this disease. Now that sounds maybe kind of wild, but that's literally a thought that I had, and I just didn't care again. I still don't care at this moment how it came to be because I'm still in the progress of trying to get onto the other side. What I wanted to share with that is because the mind oftentimes will take you on a journey. It will take you on a journey to show you what's desired, what's undesired, and oftentimes it comes with a great deal of judgment. And that's something, too, that was being rehearsed in this pulsating part of me in terms of the mind, the ego, in terms of things that I've done wrong. And, devaluing myself, or that you're not worth it and you're alone and you're separate. And these thoughts become pretty real when you're going through an event that's attacking your body, because again, we get very associated or connected to our body. So I'm dealing with some of these thoughts, and one of them was, that you're not good enough, and that was a tough one. It still maybe is a sensitive space because of the family and the story that I grew up with, and that's not bad. And there's many people that don't have those stories, fortunately, and there's other people that have it 20 times tougher than I think that I've ever had it. But that thought was still coming to the surface in terms of this amplification system, the Rolling Stones speaker systems of that you're not good enough, you're not good enough. Even though that many of you were sending such kind and beautiful messages, almost in conflict, meaning my mind telling me that you're not good enough, and then I'm receiving something that would be just artistically, poetically beautiful, and very much from the heart. And so I'm dealing with that and wanting to realize that that I've known forever, if I can use the term, that when we put our attention on anything, we're focusing, and ultimately we're creating. Now, I think that we know that when we put our focus on something, we're creating energy towards that. And yet, it can be quite hard, and I'll go back to the climbing analogy, when you're holding your vision that you're going to climb to the top, and you hold that vision in your mind, and some of the climbing that I've done, I put a watch to it. I'm trying to get to this point in time, and I do that for fun, by the way, to try and get to this point by a specific time, trying to challenge myself. And this is a different kind of challenge. I mean, I wasn't climbing a physical mountain by any means. I was just trying to hold my focused attention on what? Being present. Meaning literally being in the moment. So, this is the flip side. In the contrast of me working on being in the moment, there is not a video, there is not a YouTube, there is not a Netflix, Hulu, Disney, you name the channel. There's not a piece of film, and I'm exaggerating, of course, but I consumed lots and lots of crap because I felt the need, almost like a compulsion, like an addiction, to keep myself distracted to something beyond me having to listen to this amplification system of that you're not good enough, or that you feel bad, or that you're not empowered, you're disconnected, or that you may even die, and all of the extensions that come with that. And so I'm watching stupid stuff. Some things that were educational, some things that weren't. Again, falling asleep more than half the time, and just bored, spitless. And of course, I know, physically I know, mentally I know that that's absolutely in conflict with me being in the moment. So, as best I could, I will describe it this way. I wouldn't necessarily give myself a high-flying space beyond being candid with you about that. But I found myself realizing that I need to put more and more attention to the present moment, no matter what that would be, and to reallocate what I was doing with my energy. And so not to protect myself, not to gird, not to have a thought that suddenly I would have a thought and suddenly I would go 2 points low like I walked to the mailbox. It was just the other way around. I need to put some more focused attention on what I want. So I was having this life review. I'm going to call it that because it can be, call it a pre-game life review. I would definitely reflect it that way. And I didn't die. I'm not going to die, at least not that I'm aware of. And yet I'm processing in this way to realize that this noise is something that I have to see, to literally see, so I can rid myself of the noise by putting my focused attention on being present. So I'm asking myself to be more and more in the moment, realizing that my thoughts, my elevated thoughts that I've been in the moment, in terms of historically, that had to be just thrown out the window, because compared to what I was doing here, that was not even comparable. And I'm still, of course, working on that. But I think it's so important that I want to bring that particular part to you in terms of the having no resistance, working with the chakras, making sure that you're very continually clean. Of course, being hyper aware of our minds in terms of the attributes of the past and or the futures or the fears thereof. And yet it all goes away when we get into this void, the void of literally being absent of thought. And we have to realize how limited our physical minds are. And I've been talking about this for years, because our mind is only able to see within this bandwidth, right? There's all of this light, and yet my mind, my physical abilities can only see here. That has to do with my hearing as well, and of course my ability to sense anything else. And so I'm very limited. And yet we become comfortable with this limitation, and then by extension, the shell, can take over and have you think that this is you, that this is that you're seeing literally everything when you're not even seeing anything at all. And I began to wonder about the world, and I had some real negative thoughts about the world as a part of this whole process, wondering, what am I doing here? Why am I continuing to participate in the world that seems to be almost like swirling around the toilet, about to be flushed, from climate to interaction to personal compassion with one another. And it became very uncomfortable for me to see this. And I was admonished via my channeling to have the vision that I was seeking to have, which is not necessarily just physical, but that I needed to really see everything and to be truthful with everything that I was seeing, which is an interesting concept, because I think that a lot of times that we think that we're being truthful about me seeing something clearly. And in this process for myself, again, there was an enormous amount of things that I realized that I was coloring, like I would put on glasses and see things through these, colored glasses. And that was exemplified hugely, that my perceptions, not just sight, but in terms of my feelings and my stories, have severely constrained my ability to receive my spiritual gifts, and that's which I desire, and I desire that for myself, of course, and to be able to facilitate even stronger. And so as a part of this experience, this COVID-19 retreat, I realized that a lot of my energy has been very scattered, not nearly as focused as I thought it to be. And so that came to my awareness that I have to make some changes, that I need to make some changes within myself in terms of, my daily routines, and even my focused attention in terms of what I want to do. Not in the idea that I'm trying to impress anybody with would-be efficiency. There's a part of me that likes that, but this isn't tied to that. This is more of being brought down to an attribute of knowing that you may not live here forever. And of course, that's kind of a funny statement to say, but all of us won't. But when you get to kind of like a funnel where you're brought down to this place where you begin to wonder what you've done, what you are doing, what you'd like to do, it became very clear to me that there's a lot more that I'd like to express, but not necessarily in this broad, very messy kind of way, like I was just throwing energy around all the different kind of places. That's a little exaggerated, but not much. And so the idea that of focusing more on what I really want to do in this lifetime, and this is something I think has real value for you, because you may ask yourself, what are you doing here? What have you come here to do? And you might take your spiritual blueprint, that which we create before coming here. You can look at that like a building plan. We look at that building plan and we determine what it is that we were trying to accomplish before coming. And we wonder, in getting here, is that plan being met? And sometimes, lots of times, we take that spiritual blueprint, we throw it away, which is not bad or good. It's just something that we can do. We can make modifications to it. But whatever you're doing in terms of creating, when you're putting your attention, your energy on something by being present, which is something I hope that you're doing with me in this particular moment, I can't even begin to tell you how powerful it is. It's the essence of all creation. And when you begin to get down to those essences of who we really are, which of course is something that we hear all the time. You've heard it from me for, again, hopefully my whole lifetime, and then hopefully even more as I go forward, this attribute of love. And the more that we participate in receiving, again, no resistance to the love that is being offered to us, then we have the ability to be awakened, we have the ability to be empowered, and we need to be aware that our job is not here to convert other people. Family members, spouses, children, neighbors, and people that you work with. That's not your job. Your choice to be here is something that goes back to your spiritual blueprint if you want to have access to that. And realizing that, okay, this is what you're choosing. And when you bring yourself down to this like a funnel, to this space where everything begins to compress, and you realize that you've been playing in this very distracted way, you can become aware of, wow, what do I want to do in terms of going forward? And I want that to be very personal for you, because maybe that's something that you can relate to if you've had this experience. And if you haven't, I would beg that you would take my journey, not from the physical perspective, I wouldn't want that on anybody, but to take the spiritual pieces and be able to apply them in a way that you want to, because it has tremendous value to you to realize that we can express so much more. And that's not necessarily in trying to get something done, as much as just to have fun, to really allow yourself to move and breathe and participate in a way that truly fills you. Also in my choice to be asked to see, meaning I'm asking to see more, and they're asking me to see everything in truth, which means not me wanting to see what I wanted to see, but literally seeing everything as they are. And to accept that, and to allow that, which is a low-level word, as I've talked about before, but to actually honor that is something really, really important. And I also realized in this choice to exercise, this attribute of my vision, which is a clairvoyant ability, which is very strong, that in that space, I can't hide. Meaning I can't take some part of me and hide behind any place in the idea that that's going to somehow work. When you open yourself up to see, visually see, you get to see everything. That's external to you, of course, but you also get to see things within your own self. I would definitely say that this whole event, the COVID event, has brought me down to the singular point, like a funnel, to the singular point of being very present in the moment and realizing that my being seen, in the same way that your choice to be seen, is not kind of important, it's really important. And I'm not talking about being seen in terms of, how we look and how we present ourselves in the egoic way. Other way around, this is about literally unraveling all of that and literally allowing ourselves to express in a very, very a deeper way. This is what we talked about from the very beginning, right? In terms of 60 Minutes of Truth, that we've been asked to go within. And I found it ironic that at the end of the pandemic, the graph would show that suddenly, without my physical awareness, suddenly this is something that I have attracted, I've created. And again, I'm still to some degree asking the question, why, what I did, what did I do to create this particular event? And I do know that I was putting forth a lot of energy. That I can attest to in terms of giving a lot and sharing a lot. That's great. And clearly, I'm not receiving to the degree that needs to be done. So that's out of balance. And so that's why no resistance, so that I can receive. Now, that's not necessarily just the light or the love that comes in the light. So light is a modality. Think of it like a vehicle to transport this very, very neat, cool thing called love that some people think they hear so often they just kind of blow it out of their minds because it's so simple. But this attribute of love is likened to the most powerful attributes of a seed. Have you given that consideration? Meaning how a seed that is this very tiny little condensed piece, it doesn't have to be tiny, I guess, take an avocado seed, but the seed still has all of the ability to create something from nothing, a seed. And we have that seed through every thought that we have. And not giving attention to that thought, meaning allowing our minds or egos to just run like wild horses all over the scene, creates all this distraction. And by the way, whether that's, I can pull up my phone, in terms of that being a device that we get distracted with, me reading something, me watching something, ridiculous videos to TV programs, to me wasting time in conversation with maybe someone that I really don't want to be in conversation with. I'm saying that not to distance myself from any one person, only to say, in my personal relationships, am I appeasing this relationship and or this person, the idea that I should do this because I'm the brother of, or I'm the sister of, or I'm the person of. And that's something that, again, is a part of this refocusing, that we don't have to do anything. Not that we can't, but choosing to be present with someone, really, really present. That means leaning in and listening to what they have to say versus thinking what it is that I'm going to say based upon what you're going to say. And so oftentimes, at least within me, especially my family tree, that we tend to talk on top of one another in an unpleasant way. And so taking the time to realize that I'm not being present with that, and to literally get in touch further with the energy that someone's sharing with me as a family member, or even you in terms of our interaction, participating as a friend, or working with a session. All of that I think is extremely important, and it's something that I think has tremendous value that I wanted to share today, because I feel that there is so much more to do. So even as we speak, like I said, I'm limited to my physical activity. My expenditure of energy is guarded. I'm guarded in the sense that I'm not able to do too much. At this moment, I'm feeling pretty good, which is somewhat typical, and I may crash, and if it costs me 2 days as a result of putting forth this energy to present this to you, I'm cool with that. But at the same time, I want that to be in further balance for me, the person. Not just because I've got COVID, I'm trying to manage this energy as much as get used to the idea that there's so much more to receive. And again, in the form of the light, with the love that comes through the energy, so that we can express what our soul purposes come here to do. So being in the moment and becoming aware of all of this noise that's around us is something that I think each and every one of us is dealing with. Even though COVID's maybe coming to a close to the degree that it has been this fear-based thing that is literally taken millions of lives, I think it's important to appreciate that if we want to really go deep, and again, you don't have to do it through an accident, drama, a disease, anything, that this is what I want to convey, that we can take these precious moments that we have, realizing that they're not going to be everlasting from a physical perspective, and that if we're wanting to express something in this realm, then let's get on with it. And let's stop with the idea that it has to be done through the perspective of being seen in a certain kind of way. And sometimes I'm doing that in terms of holding a pose before you. But we want to let go of that from an energetic perspective, from a psychological perspective, from an ego perspective, from maybe even a clothing perspective, that we literally change it all up to really get in touch with what we want to express here. And if anything, I think most of us want to be more open-hearted in terms of really who we are. And we can't do that if we're limiting ourselves to see and experience and then take on these false identities. We can't do that. So if we go back to the three chakras, I have found in talking, actually was brought to my attention via somebody else, that there are many people who have been experiencing these three chakra spaces. I didn't necessarily put that pattern together for myself. Someone else in the spiritual realm has the space of the people shared that with me, and then I started thinking about the people I've facilitated, and when I go to tune in their bodies, that those three chakras were something that were challenged, if I can use that term. So even if you haven't gotten this COVID, it's still worthy of showing that pattern to you, because I think that's something that you want to be aware of. And by the way, if I'm spending 10 to 12 times a day going through the chakras, I would hope that you'd give that consideration too. And it's not because we're trying to drive ourselves nuts when being perfectly clean, as much as realize that there's something going on that enables us to realize that we're not in balance. And the only way that we can correct that is becoming aware that we're not in balance. And so we have to address that. And if it has to do with these root pieces, then there's something to address. And I want to talk about that perhaps in the next time that we go to have a dialogue. For this moment, I'm feeling a little bit more declining of energy, so I'm going to wrap it up. But I wanted to share, I guess, in conclusion, the following things: that if we can choose to be hyper-present within ourselves, we create a void of this noise to have an understanding, knowledge, illumination of what we've come here to do so that we can express it. And the more that we choose to do that outside of these perceptions of who we think that we are, that we've participated in terms of linear family trees or, education or money or status or what cars we're driving or what clothes we're wearing or what rings we're wearing, it doesn't really matter. And because when you find that your body's taxed, as mine has been, you don't really care about any of that. None of it. I don't care what you drove or what you have or what house you have. When you're really feeling that going to the bathroom and back is, a highlight for the day in terms of a physical activity, you realize that all these other things really don't matter. And of course, we all know that when we come to the end, it won't matter anyway. So my choice of wanting to present is for us to be really in touch with what we've come here to do, to become even more focused on what it is that you've come here to do as a soul. And maybe we can consider this a homework assignment, that you literally go and really dig in deeper in terms of not just a general that I want to change the world. Let's get much more specific to that in terms of how you want to continue to vibrate in the ways that you haven't, or would like to. And there's something really keen about giving ourselves more and more permission to be aligned. As we do that, it creates an exchange, right, where we can continue to feel more and more like we're in a hive, if you will, or a group of people who are finding ourselves being who we are, expressing who we are, not trying to convince somebody, not trying to appease somebody in a certain kind of way, but rather just being truly who we are. And we create this energy, and of course this synergy of really working together in a really beautiful way. I'm absolutely finding myself crashing at this moment, so I'm going to wrap it up only to share with you my absolute gratitude for the endless energy that you have and continue to send, regardless of my having COVID or not, but especially in that. And at the same time, my wanting to facilitate even stronger, more compassionately, even with more focused energy on helping you to become further aware of what you come here to do so that you can continue to really express that for whatever amount of physical time that we would perceivingly have in this moment. I'm just in so much gratitude, and I will have to say this whole experience has been one of absolute gratitude, and even while I'm still in the midst of it, are definitely coming out. But I'm just so grateful for this event. Would never necessarily want to think I would sign up for this kind of event, but I have, and I just want to pass on, hopefully, these opportunities for you to use them as tools so that you don't have to necessarily go through the kind of drama that I and perhaps others, or maybe you have gone through, and to do so in a non-judgmental way, that now this is where we are. No matter where we've been, if we become very, very present now, then we can take ourselves forward in a really beautiful way. Please let me continue to thank you for everything that you offer, each other and certainly me as well, and have a wonderful afternoon.